Hey guys, in our Rockstar Hour today, we are talking about setting expectations and clarifying those work expectations, especially with your new and prospective clients in a phase where you're just entering the dating period, so to say, when you're scheduling, for instance, a discovery call with them or a sales call, maybe going into the second phase with the sales process in your customer journey. And that's when you're already starting kind of like diving into small intricacies about the company culture and the general business and work expectations and just type of the personality of your prospective client too. And maybe asking some of the candid questions about work style and what do they actually like to do in their free time, just to get to know them a little bit more. And so my question for you is basically, how do you discuss work expectations? How do you tackle this conversation about professional expectations, especially with your new clients? And how do you communicate your expectations as far as your expectations of the relationship with this new prospective client? Is it during a discovery call? Do you mention something in your follow-up email? Do you have something actually mentioned on your services page on the website? And is it maybe a second meeting that you schedule as a follow-up after your discovery call with the prospective client? Or do you actually ever talk about the expectations at work? And how are you expected to, maybe on the client side and on your side, to handle the engagement with this new client? Do you have a conversation as a kind of like a standard procedure in all your client onboarding? Is it during the kickoff meeting that you actually devote some time to discuss the expectations with your new client? What I'm trying to say is that two things can definitely affect your relationship with the client. It's unclear and not discussed expectations, and maybe not set agreements for your professional engagement with the client, and poor communication. Maybe not devoting the time to actually think about your potential relationship with the client, and even on your side, just to protect yourself, to decide, is this a good match for you professionally? I know that we are all going through tough times, and any type of client work is just a blessing these days. And at the same time, I want you guys to feel supported too, even if you're supporting your clients. I want you to feel protected, and I want you to be heard and especially appreciated in your client relationship. Think about and take a minute maybe to think about your relationships in your life. Be it work or personal, have you actually taken the time to discuss any of your expectations, maybe with your spouse or your partner? Anything about the expectations as far as raising a child, or expectations of how you're handling the communication with your in-laws? Has there ever been a conversation of this sort where you actually just kind of like sat down and laid out all of the agreements with your partner? And has there been a discussion about expectations with your previous clients? Or maybe if you're coming from a corporate background, has that been part of your corporate culture in the company that you worked in? And has that made a difference? Has that made the relationship better? Do you actually kind of like, are you used to having those maybe sometimes tough conversations too, and maybe candid conversations? So think about your professional relationships now. Compare maybe that feeling that you had when you just first started supporting a client, and maybe you had just maybe one or two clients, and your confidence level was not at the level of leadership or authority. And maybe after having worked with 3 to 5 clients now, you definitely feel more empowered and more on the leadership level where you can have that conversation with your client. So do you feel different now, maybe after having worked with a few clients, that more empowered to actually have a conversation and incorporate that into your onboarding procedure with your new clients? So I can tell you from my experience that when I don't set boundaries and I don't discuss expectations with my prospective clients, and I've done that actually in the past, especially when I first just started out working as a virtual assistant, I can actually remember a few instances when I felt disappointed, honestly, and I felt frustrated and sometimes underappreciated or valued, when on my side of the story, I was doing everything that I was expected to do. I was operating on the assumptions assumptions. So it was the story on my side. It was the assumptions that I made as far as how certain tasks and projects should be tackled. And apparently that did not match my client's expectations. So I am thinking that when that part is definitely not covered in your onboarding process, or when you're not talking about this with your client during the discovery call, or even during the sales phase of already making a decision, making an offer to your client to work with you, then that can ultimately breed some negative feelings and maybe some hesitations as far as like, do you really want to continue working with this client? Only because those expectations were not set and the agreements were not made. So what are actually the good moments as far as like, where can you bring up this conversation with your potential client? I'm thinking a good moment could be during your sales call, or maybe your discovery call, whatever you call it, maybe a clarity call, a strategy call, just whichever name you come up for it. And that's kind of like that first touch point with your client when you get a chance to open up in the meeting that discussion with them. So maybe at the time when they purchase a product or something off of your website, and that again kind of like opens the door to have a conversation or a meeting with your prospective client. Maybe at the time when you're DMing them on Facebook and you're just kind of like starting that conversation again, like that courting period as far as finding out, are you guys a good match? Do you guys have a trial period? So maybe some virtual assistants, and especially I think that it's actually applicable to online business managers when that's like that 90-day period of dating your client, so to say. And so that could be a potential trial period when you can bring up a conversation about expectations. And then especially if you're really enjoying working with this client, maybe discussing those agreements moving forward if you want to extend an offer to work with them on a 6 or 9 months basis. I feel like that could be kind of like a good opportunity to bring that up. Also, do you include maybe a clause in your professional portfolio that talks about your agreements and expectations? Do you mention anything on the website? Do you have that as a blurb on your services page? I think I already mentioned that earlier. So share with me, guys, kind of like, where do you feel that could be a good opportunity in your process of onboarding and talking with a new prospective client? So think about all the ways how impacting or touching your new client, all the ways where there could be an appropriate time to discuss those expectations. And you can follow up with them after a discovery call and maybe incorporate that into your follow-up email. I work best when I work best in the environment, again, when I work best in situations. So kind of like giving them a very good indication, you guys are going to be a good match. I also want you to maybe mention this in your social media pages, so your business pages on your Instagram or your Facebook page. If you're creating a group, could that be potentially a good place to set your expectations? So there are plenty of different channels where you can actually bring this up and where you can definitely set your clear boundaries, talk about your work expectations before you start your transactional relationship with the client, just to make sure that you guys are on the same page with your clients and that you protect yourself, and then you are definitely protecting your client too, as far as not to run into any obstacles, any disappointments or frustrations. I feel like that's just kind of like a win-win for both situations. And the second side of this is, do you ever ask your client as far as their expectations of your performance, of your tasks and projects that you're going to be, especially projects that you're going helping them with? So the question number one I would actually ask is that to approach the conversation in the very, very first meeting that you have with the client. Once you get your foot in the door, ask them to share their values with you. What is important to your client? And do you feel like, again, those values actually match up with yours? And maybe even start the conversation with sharing your values. What's important for you? Kindness, compassion, leadership, empowerment, any type of appreciation and gratitude. What's actually important to you in this working relationship? And then invite them in turn to also share their expectations as well and their values, and how to see exactly how you guys align. And the question number two, I would say, then ask about your client's expectation as far as this particular engagement with you. So as far as like this professional relationship that you guys are about to start building, and maybe what has not worked in their previous relationship with a virtual assistant that they might have had, or a project manager or online business manager, whichever role you're interviewing for. So just ask what actually didn't work out with them and what was maybe missing from that relationship. Question number 3, I would ask, have they taken any personality tests? Do you know your personality types? Maybe the Kolbe test, maybe the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs, anything that you can actually share with your potential client and see if you guys are matched that way. Myers-Briggs and Enneagram are definitely free. I know the Kolbe test can actually also be free, and I'm happy to share all the links. The StrengthsFinder test, the High 5 test, I believe like that's also kind of like one of the very good indicators of your professional match with the client. Ask them, once you maybe share your result, ask them to share something that would be applicable to your professional relationship as far as this personality test and professional career tests, and see if you guys are a good match. I kind of just like want you to definitely always strive to be in your zone of leadership, in your zone of genius. And what can be better than when you know that you're in synergy with your partnership, with your potential client, and where you're both playing into the strength of your partnership. Question number 4 that I would definitely make a part of your discovery call or your onboarding call with your potential client is that ask them to maybe speak with 1 or 2 of their current team members, if they have a team, or if anyone that they've outsourced their services to previously. And again, ask them questions about, do you guys work on weekends? When it's most stressful in your work environment? Do you observe regular office hours? Some questions that you feel, again, could make you kind of feel more protected, and again, could help you maybe ask some other questions as far as the boundaries and expectations. And then the very final question I would ask is definitely what has gone poorly and what has gone really well, especially when it applies to the projects and tasks that you will be working on. Ask about like what's been the best, like what's worked the best in the projects and tasks that were tackled by someone else before, and maybe what's been most successful or stressful in those projects and maybe those seasons of a business, like maybe it's a launch season, right? And so what was the most stressful during that time? Maybe that could give you a little bit of an insight. How can you be more supportive to your potential client during that time, just to make sure that that whole launch season goes easier on them. So listen critically. That's basically my last nugget that I want to leave you with. Listen critically throughout the entire conversation that you have about expectations with your client, and start vetting your client from basically that first minute that you're talking with them, and really be protective of your personality, of your zone of leadership and genius, so that you feel like it's a good match for you too, not only transaction and financially wise, but also professionally, mentally, and just generally kind of like your well-being. Be very protective as far as the clients that you decide to work with. So it's always a positive environment, and it's empowering for you too to grow professionally. And so it's a win-win for both the client and you. Good luck in your client onboarding search and maybe refining that process. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you want me to take a look at your welcome packet, or maybe at your client onboarding system. I'd be happy to definitely share my insights with you. Rock on.